From Stonewall to the Supreme Court, a look at the history of LGBT activism in America. From the Stonewall Riots to the Supreme Court's ruling on same-sex marriage, the LGBTQ community has made remarkable strides towards equality in America. To fully appreciate the progress we've made, it's important to understand the history of LGBTQ activism in our country. In this post, we'll explore the major events in history of queer activism and share some tidbits along the way. The Stonewall Riots. In June of 1969, a series of violent demonstrations took place outside of the Stonewall Inn, a gay bar in New York City's Greenwich Village. The riots, which are widely considered to be the beginning of the modern LGBTQ rights movement, were sparked by a police raid of the bar. During the raid, patrons of the bar resisted arrest and fought back against the police, leading to 3 days of protests and demonstrations. The Stonewall Riots were a turning point in the fight for queer rights, as they demonstrated the power of collective action and sparked a wave of LGBTQ activism. The first Pride March. 1 year after the Stonewall Riots, the first Pride March was held in New York City. The march, which was organized by the Gay Liberation Front and the Christopher Street Liberation Day Committee, served as a celebration of the LGBTQ community and a protest of continued discrimination. The march was attended by an estimated 5,000 people and has since become an annual event in cities around the world. AIDS activism. In the early 1980s, the AIDS epidemic began to ravage the LGBTQ community. In response, a movement of AIDS activists emerged and began to demand recognition of the disease and access to treatment. AIDS activists, such as the members of ACT UP and the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, organized protests and demonstrations to raise awareness and push for government action. Their efforts eventually led to the passage of the AIDS Drug Assistance Act in 1990, which provided funding for AIDS treatment and research. The fight for marriage equality. In 2015, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of same-sex marriage in the landmark case of Obergefell v. Hodges. This ruling finally granted same-sex couples the right to marry and was the culmination of decades of work by LGBTQ activists. Activists had been pushing for marriage equality since the 1970s, and their efforts were finally rewarded with the Supreme Court's ruling. Conclusion: from the Stonewall Riots to the Obergefell v. Hodges ruling, the LGBTQ community has made significant strides towards equality in America. While the fight for LGBTQ rights is far from over, it's important to recognize and celebrate the progress we've made. So next time you're out on the town celebrating Pride, don't forget to give a shout out to the activists who made it all possible.